Welcome to Networking with Paritosh, a show where we dive deep into the art and science of building lasting relationships. I'm Paritosh Pathak, your host and your guide to enhancing your networking skills and your professional success. In today's episode, we'll be discussing a topic that is given far less value than it actually deserves. In fact, a lot of people make the mistake of taking this topic for granted and without even realizing end up paying huge opportunity cost. And this topic is first impressions. So, whether it is a high-stake business meeting, a networking dinner, or a virtual call, the first couple of moments of interaction that you're having with someone is often defining the entire course of the relationship with the person. And if you've ever had a feeling that someone that you've barely met or interacted with doesn't really like you and you don't know why, the chances are your first impression has gone wrong. Think about it. Whenever it was the last time you met someone for the first time, isn't it true that even before they had spoken a word to you, barely had any conversation, you had already started to form an opinion about them? And you can be rest assured they had started to do the same for you. Now, the thing is, these first impressions are often formed really quickly, but they can have a lasting impact on the relationship that you share with the person. So, when these impressions are positive, they obviously have a positive impact on the relationship, and when these first impressions intentionally or unintentionally formed negative, then they can have negative impact on these relationships. But what goes on in our brain when these impressions are being formed? Are we completely helpless? Can we do something about them? Are there some actions we can take to form the best first impression that we can? These are some of the questions that we will be unraveling in this podcast. My goal today is to cover the following with you. Number one, the importance of the first impressions, and more specifically, the neuroscience behind them. Two, the various components that come together to form a great first impression. Three, the practical strategies that you can use to put your best foot forward, build that right first impression. And number four, the mistakes that can make it all go to waste. So whether you're looking to impress at your next industry event or hone your day-to-day skills, buckle up as we dive into the fascinating world of first impressions. Now let's get into understanding what first impressions really are and exactly why they're important. Defining first impressions are something like this, that they are the immediate thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that we form about other people, or sometimes even about situations. Now, these get formed within the first few moments of interaction with someone, and sometimes, this is important to note, sometimes even before we've had an interaction. Sometimes what happens is that by the time you've shaken hands with someone and just gotten to know their name, you've already started forming an opinion about them, and they've started to do the same for you. And these opinions are not just always as simple as I like this person or I don't like this person. It could also be fear, respect, or even attraction. And this entire process of the first impression being formed is subconscious, meaning that we're not actually going, what do I want to think about this person? It's happening on its own. Since these impressions are getting formed within milliseconds of meeting someone, and we have very little time to do something about them, it's important to understand the science behind them, and it's also important to understand why we form these impressions. Let's begin with that. The first is a concept called thin slicing. The way our society works today, the way our ecosystem works today, the amount of data that we're exposed to, the number of decisions we have to make every single day, it's become a need for us to make as accurate decisions as possible with the minimum amount of data and minimal amount of time. So the brain uses the information available to make quick snapshots of judgment. And the second is also our societal conditioning, which means that we have grown up in an ecosystem, people talking about something, watching movies, TV serials. We know someone dressed well today probably means that they're doing well in life, and those kind of decisions come to us. This was a bit about the first impressions. Now let's also cover the importance. At first, the importance of first impression seems obvious, that if someone likes you, that's good, right? But their importance is actually far greater than that. The good first impression that are getting formed, the good first impressions that are getting formed can often have a long-term effect, positive effect on a relationship. And sometimes they can define the entire course of a relationship and what's going to unfold in that relationship. Think about it. How we remember people actually influences our future interactions with them. Sometimes we look forward to seeing people because we have got some positive opinions about them. And sometimes when we don't, we're not really particularly excited about meeting them. And let's particularly talk about the world of business networking. Now, in the world of business networking, it is essential to establish credibility, build rapport quickly, because you're not going to have a lot of time. Imagine you've gone to a networking event, a conference. You're going to spend barely a few minutes talking to someone until unless, of course, there's a reason to continue that conversation. So you're going to have a very short time. And in that short time, you're going to have to make a decision about someone. Let's say you're interested in buying something from someone. You don't have a lot of time. So the concept of thin slicing comes back here again. And this is where the need of elevator pitches also come from, that when you're meeting people, you want to make the best first impression. So people prepare their pitches and they go in because the other person is not going to give them a lot of time, right? That's where this comes from, right? And notice that at the right place, building the right first impression means amazing opportunity, partnerships, successful collaboration, successful interactions, and a lot more. And sometimes when I talk about the concept of first impression, a lot of people say, Paritosh, I don't care about this first impression mumbo jumbo. And I get that. I respect that. I respect your point of view that this is not a topic that you care about. But the fact that other people, you may not be excited about it, but the fact that other people are using first impressions to make decisions about you makes this a conversation worth having. Okay. Now let's jump into the neuroscience of first impressions. As we go into neuroscience, I first want to say I'm not a neuroscientist, and whatever I'm sharing with you right now comes from my own experience, my own research, my interest from the topic, having implemented myself, found good amount of success in it. But I'm not a neuroscientist. Okay, so let's understand what's happening in the brain, and a lot of technical terms I came across when I was trying to learn how the brain forms these opinions. So I'm going to try and simplify as much as possible. First is this concept called instant analysis. Our brain is like a really, 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 really super fast computer, right? It's instantly analyzing information from someone's appearance, their body language, their expressions, right, to form quick impressions. That's how brain is working. It works at a relatively very fast speed. Okay. Then second, it's using the emotional center, response center, and it reacts to the emotions that other person has. If somebody is happy and relaxed, it's going to respond to that. And if somebody's stressed, then it's going to have a different kind of response for that. It's going to look at positive response, negative response. And again, doing this almost immediately. The third, memory check. As the brain is forming these impressions, receiving this data, it's going back to its memory and saying, what do I remember from other people who I have experienced in my life, who've looked like this person, who have spoken like this person, right, who've had the kind of energy and emotion this person has. And it's bringing that data to the pool where the first impression is being formed, and it looks at whether it reminds us of someone that we've already met. And all of this is happening really, really fast, sometimes within fractions of seconds, right? Now, brain is using two things to form impression about someone. And we're going to use an example that someone else is forming impression about you. So let's go with that example. So first thing is that they're going to use what they see to form an opinion, which means they're going to look at what you wear, what's your body language, what's your emotional state, right? And this will come in handy to make that impression. And the second, it's going to scan its memory bank to look at who do you remind me of, what kind of person do you remind me of. And it's going to combine these two things to form a first impression. Now, this is a good news, bad news situation. Bad news particularly because they are scanning, they're using the memory bank, their past experiences to form an opinion. You have no control over it. In the past, if they met somebody like you who's cheated them, defrauded them, then they would be guarded. And there's nothing really you can do about that. But the good news is they're also using what they see in you, what they feel after having interacted with you or while having interaction with you. That is something that you can have far greater control over. So all is not lost, right? Now, remember this. Giving importance to first impressions is essential because of this one concept as well. Now, adjusting first impressions. A lot of people come and ask, Paritosh, if a first impression has been formed once, can I change that? Well, yes, you can, but it's going to take a lot of effort. If I put it in terms of numbers, it could take up to 20 positive interactions after one negative interaction. Let's say your first interaction with someone was negative. After that, it could take up to 20 positive interactions to change that first impression. So why do you want to put in that kind of hard work? Do it right at the beginning. Okay. Then second is our one concept that I love talking about. I'm fascinated by this thing, the concept of confirmation bias, which means we first form an opinion and then we look at the data just to validate that opinion. So if my first impression about you has been negative, then I'm going to use whatever you do next. And I'm going to say, see, that's not good, right? And I'm going to validate the opinion that I've already formed, confirmation bias. Now, one interesting thing and also a scary thing at the same time is that these first impressions are often incredibly accurate. A lot of studies have happened where people were given photographs and they were asked to define the kind of person they are. They've never met the person before just from the photographs. And in those studies, it was surprising how accurate description people were able to come up with, right? So because we have formed these first impressions in the past and over a period of time, we've seen that they're right, we use this system more and more. Now let's jump ahead and understand the components that come together to form the first impressions. The first one is the obvious one, appearance. Think about it. When we dress well, it uplifts our mood. We feel better. When we wear nice suits, etc., sometimes we feel more powerful. Nice dresses make us feel more beautiful. Similarly, how we dress not only affects us, it impacts how others feel and perceive us, right? Attire, grooming, overall physical appearance, maintaining yourself can significantly influence the first impression people form about us. And whether we like it or not, sometimes this conversation feels superficial that we're saying that, hey, you should dress well so that people like you better. Shouldn't people like you for who you are? I get that. I do understand. At some level, I do agree too. But the fact is that people are using what we look like to make assumptions and form perceptions about us. It's just the reality. Okay. The second component is visual and verbal, what we see or what we hear. Big one being our body language. Well, when we talk about body language, essentially three things. One is literally our body language? Is it a closed body language, open body language? A lot of that conversation is already out there in the world. Many videos, take some time, watch that. Right, so how confident, comfortable, more than confident, comfortable does the other person feel that you're in your skin? That's one. Two is the tone that you're using, right? Is your tone nervous? A nervous person would speak like, yeah, I know, that happened and then I went there, right? So what kind of tone that you have? Is it relaxed, right? The second component is visual or verbal, meaning what we see and what we hear. And in this, the body language plays a very important role. And when I say body language, I'm actually talking about three things specifically. One is literally our body language, how confident we seem to others or how comfortable we are in our skin. Nervous body language, closed body language, of course, is going to create a certain perception. People are going to use that to create a certain perception. And an open body language, a comfortable body language is going to help create a positive first impression. That's there. And this is very, very important. One of the most important aspects. Along with that is also tone, how your tone is, right? Are you speaking in a nervous tone? Nervous tone is something like, yeah, I know, and I really wanted to share. Oh, thank you so much, right? Where your body language and your tone are not in sync. Our brain identifies consistency and it doesn't like inconsistency. So if you are seeming nervous, there are inconsistencies out there. So tone is second. And third is words. There are a lot of data out there which suggest the percentage importance of these three things. If I round off the number, the importance is around 50%. No, 60% body language. 30% your tone, and around 10% your words, right? Words are very important, but their entire role in the conversation is around 10%. What you say matters 10% in creating the impact. 30% is how you say it, the tone, the voice modulation, and around 60% is your body language. That's there. So the power of body language, posture, facial expressions, energy, emotion are all coming together to help form the perception. And then the third component is the non-visual, which is just as important, right? Let's look at the emotional contagion. And the reason I'm saying contagion is very important to discuss this because emotions are contagious. There's a lot of recent studies that have been coming out that are concluding that the stress as an emotion is contagious, which means if you're sitting around someone who's stressed, its chances are that that'll influence other person, and there are science behind that. I'm skipping that right now, but the other person will also end up getting stressed. Or on the other side, you might have seen this video where in a foreign country, not in India, in a metro train, there's a guy standing. He's got earphones on, watching something on the phone, and he's laughing, right? He's really, really laughing. And slowly, the entire segment around him of people, they start busting into laughter. Nobody knows why they're laughing, but they're just laughing because this person is, and laughter is contagious. So emotions are contagious, okay? And then I personally have a lot of belief in this energy, right? The energy that you are carrying influences other people. So these things form the non-verbal. So you've got the appearance, you've got how you dress, that is, you've got the verbal and the visual, your body language, your tone, your words, and the non-visual is emotions, the energy that you're carrying. Okay. With this, let's jump into now the strategies to make lasting first impressions. Okay, so one of my favorite tools is research. I know this is boring. Preparing yourself to go into an event. When I talk about going to networking events, etc., I talk about three things: before, during, and after. So before part is preparation. That's absolutely essential, right? So the more you know about the people that you're going to meet, the more comfortable you're going to feel. So do research on people before going and meeting them. Okay. Then the second one, mindfulness and presence, being in the moment. So many times we're at these networking events, opportunities, parties, etc., where we're feeling so nervous, our brain is going into either the regret of the past or the worry of the future, but we're not in the present. So make a decision to be in that moment, to be there mentally, physically, emotionally. You can, right? Active listening is a really, really great tool, right? And it's just not about active listening. I talk about a concept called listening through speaking, pretty interesting, which is where you speak a little bit to convey the message that you're listening. So there could be things like when somebody's talking to you, you could go around and say, I understand. I see. Wow. That's amazing. How did you manage that? So these subtle cues that you deliver help the other person feel that you're really listening to them. So that's really, really powerful in making first impression. Do not underestimate the value of this. Start doing. Okay. And then positive attitude. The sense of optimism that you carry, smiling, don't forget that, smiling. When you smile, it really communicates light and positive energy, which again, we've discussed before, people use that to make decisions about us. And talking of decisions, a decision to be entrusted in others. Know this, that it's the decision of wanting to be entrusting that creates the pressure. When we go in our head, oh my God, they may not like me. Oh my God, what will they think of me? Oh my God, I want them to like me, right? So when you want the conversation to be about you, when you want others to like you, that creates the pressure. And when you make the decision that you want to like other people, that changes the game. It's a huge game changer. It's very subtle. Very few people realize the power of it. Okay. But this really helps. Try this out. And then authenticity, right? Everyone can see everyone's truth, right? So just wherever you're going, just be the true self. This doesn't mean that you be goofy or anything, but you be your true self. So once again, preparation, mindfulness and presence, active listening, positive attitude, a decision to be interested in others, and being authentic. With this, let's also cover some of the mistakes that can make everything go to waste. These are the mistakes you must at all cost absolutely avoid. Now, the obvious ones that we've already discussed above is not being prepared, right? If you go into an event that you're not prepared, that's a bit of a mistake. Try and avoid that. Then not having a positive body language, not communicating, not speaking, active listening, etc. So these are the obvious ones. But the three big killers of positive first impression. And the first one is being distracted or seeming uninterested to be there. If you are with someone, when you're talking to them, just don't be distracted. Don't be looking around to find the next person to talk to, right? Be there. That's really, really important. Now, understand that. A lot of time, people will do this. They'll be distracted or uninterested because they may be under some fear, under some pressure, etc. And because of that, they may not be able to maintain eye contact. But understand this, that whatever reason you are distracted because of, people will perceive the way they perceive. So somebody could perceive you operating in a certain way because of fear as rudeness, as arrogance, as ego, right? We've already discussed confirmation bias. People make a perception and then they'll take whatever data available to confirm, okay? So that's very, very important. Number one, being distracted and uninterested, one of the biggest killers. The second big killer is oversharing, not knowing when to stop. This is so common, unfortunately. So common. At networking events, I see this all the time. People start talking about themselves, about their business, etc. And they continue giving information without even taking cognizance of whether the person that they're talking to is even interested in that much information or not. So be aware of this one, right? And third one And this is probably, out of the three, the biggest. I might have said that already for the first one, but this one is the biggest, right? Which is limiting yourself with your past experiences. In the past, chances are there have been occasions where you have messed up your first impression. And as you're watching this or you're listening to this, you're probably having some memories and you're going, oh my God, yes, I've made these mistakes. Okay. Limiting yourself with your past experiences and letting those past experiences limit you is perhaps one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Okay, everybody's made mistakes. You're going to continue making mistakes. There's no possibility in the world where you're not going to make mistakes. So you'll have to be okay with that. You just got to keep getting better. And talking about that, let's go to the practical exercises and the tips that you can actually you can implement to address these issues and challenges. 1, address your fears and mental barriers. A lot of us want to turn a blind eye. We don't want to look at the fears, etc., that we have. We're like, okay, let's keep them at the side, because if I look at them, I'll have to go, oh my God, I've got these, right? Stop doing that to yourself. This is not helping. Ignorance is not a game plan. It's not an action. It's not a strategy. It's just going to come back with a lot more power and take you down another day. Okay, so address your fears, talk about them to the right kind of people, understand what you're dealing with. Talking about those helps. The second thing that's a very powerful tool that I've myself used multiple times, countless times in my journey to overcome my stress, my anxiety, my fear of events, etc., is visualization. I remember I used to spend a lot of time, especially before entering an event. I would sit down in the car, close my eyes, and I would visualize that I'm going to an event, I'm having conversations. And in the beginning, it was hard. My brain wouldn't want to just accept, right? But I did not give up. And over a period of time, it actually started to make a lot of difference. So use visualization. Okay. The next tool is reflecting. After you come back from an event, take some time and reflect. And don't just focus on the negatives. Okay. Take some time, reflect, understand what you did well, what you could have done better. And for what you did well, pat your back. Let your brain know that you're doing well. That's very, very important. All right. So as we wrap up today's podcast, I want you to remember that these perceptions and opinions are more than just some superficial judgment that we're forming. They're deeply rooted in human psychology, and they significantly impact the potential of our both personal and professional relationships. But the good news is they aren't set in stone. You can change them over a period of time with awareness, with practice. We can actually have far greater control. You can actually have far greater control on how others perceive you. So embrace the power of presence, the body language, being mindful. The subtle cues that you give to other people speak volume. So if this episode has been valuable for you, if you found something that's really helped you, then I'd like to request you to please share this with someone who you think you could benefit, someone you think would benefit from this podcast. Okay, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and stay tuned for future episodes that are coming in. So until the next time, keep making meaningful connections, right? Every meeting, every new interaction is an opportunity to something amazing that's going to unfold, right? So keep the game on. Just remember, small steps make a big difference. This is Paritosh Pathak signing off from Networking with Paritosh. See you soon with another episode.